The effect. What is the counter to the spell? If the spell is being cast to make us forget, then there must be a counter to it. Now, there is a counter, and many of you are already applying it, and that's why you've seen things like the Mandela effect. You can't see the Mandela effect unless you have your hand upon the counter spell. And the counter to the Mandela effect, the thing that makes us forget, is the truth.
I keep pointing out everybody is Mandela affected.
Everybody is affected with lies.
There are no exceptions. Everybody's going through it. Some people will fight tooth and nail to deny it. The Mandela effect's real. You people need to stop denying it. No such thing as the unaffected. We only have deniers.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Might call the Mandela effect. And you're going to want to buckle up. And I'm sure if given enough time, you might also be able to come up with an instance or two where large groups on the internet have fervently formed communities around, to put it nicely, wrong information.
String theory takes you before the Big Bang, before Genesis itself. And what does string theory say? It says that there is a multiverse of universes.
He's already coming into power.
It's only a dream.
The Mandela effect is revealing things that have always been yet never known. It's revealing that our soul is splintered and fractured, and each portion is coalesced in a replica version of yourself that has been sharing your soul since the day you were born, all in different realities, all in the same dimension, separated by light years, not by dimensions. Not to say there are dimensions, of course, but they are parallel as well. It's really quite remarkable. It's revealing that quantum entanglement is the basic fundamental foundation of existence. And it's as simple as that. And like I mentioned before, our soul is splintered and fractured. It's amazing, but yet it's one and connected with this quantum entanglement.
To start a cult of belief.
The yellow sun. The sun was yellow when I was a kid, when I was growing up. Not pure yellow, but it had a yellow tint to it, and now it doesn't. Now it's white. And I believe that there are some reasons for all of these things. Now, that being established and known, I believe that we are also living in a time that many people are dubbing the awakening. We live in a time where a lot of concepts, a lot of truths, a lot of breadcrumbs are manifesting and just rising to the surface.
You are not imagining things. People have changed. They're colder, ruder, more selfish, more disrespectful, and more toxic. And if you do not protect yourself sooner rather than later, they'll eat you alive.
Let me go ahead and give a brief breakdown of what the Mandela effect is. Basically, the Mandela effect is the phenomena of a large group, a large population of people in the world who remember various events or phrases or logos or things that are established as a part of our history. They remember them as being something different entirely, as if it were an alternative reality. And now that reality has changed. So let me give you some examples, and then we'll talk about the popular theories about things that people have brought up of what they think that it is. And then, of course, I'll tell you what I believe that it is. So some examples, some of my personal favorite examples are the Berenstain Bears, the spelling of Berenstain. Now it's when I was a kid, when I was growing up. Last but not least, and like I said, these are just a few examples so that we can move on. let's go ahead and talk about the various theories that people have postulated and come up with to explain the Mandela effect. Now, let's get into what I believe that the Mandela effect is. This comes after a couple of years of experience and study and research. I have come to believe that this world that we live in, that this is a fantasy world. For example, when you go to the movies and you watch a fantasy movie, or you read a book that's fictional, or you see sci-fi on the television, that those things are given to us. Basically, our reality is being fed back to us as entertainment, amusement, and wishes. Wishes being things that look nice and would be really nice if they actually happened, but subconsciously we sort of accept the fact that they're never going to happen, that they're not real. I absolutely believe, and that's where I am on my path now, that our world is a fantasy world. Okay, so when I say fantasy, I'm talking about things like the existence and reality of magic, of giants, titans, gods, elves, all of those types of things that you normally would associate with the concept of fantasy. We have been conditioned. They don't come directly out and say, hey, fantasy is all a lie, it's all fake, but they allow us to assume that it is. And when we assume that fantasy is all fake, not attainable, not achievable, and not active in the lives, in our realm that we live on now, then we give up on it. We let it go. This is something that they place the idea in front of us, and because of who we are, and because of the power that is latent inside of us, the potential that we have, we are the ones that use our thoughts, which are very powerful, which are energetic and basically magic. We are the ones that believe in it. We are the ones who have changed our perception. And I'm going to get into a lot more detail about that as we go forward. But our reality is being fed back to us as purely entertainment. They're taking what is actually real and they're saying, here you go, watch this for amusement. Watch this for something that you wish you could do or you wish you could be, but you're going to tell yourself that you know you cannot be that. You know you can't experience that. You know you can't achieve that. So go ahead and watch the movie or read the book so that you can vicariously live through the protagonist or through one of the main characters. But keep in mind, you'll never really be able to do it. I don't believe that. I see the truth in what is handed right back to us. You see, I understand, and I have been keeping track of the powers that be, temporarily, and their methods. And while I don't agree with their methods, and while I know that there are a lot of immoral questions when it comes to the things that they have done over the past few thousand years, I do recognize patterns in the things that they have done. I do see the little pieces of evidence. I call them breadcrumbs. I can see the little puzzle pieces, and we can take those puzzle pieces and put them back together to create and sort of recreate the picture of the truth, the reality of ourselves and our realm that we live on. This is a magical place. Now, when I say magic, I'm not talking about fanciful. I'm not talking about, just as it's portrayed in a very cartoonified way, pixies with little wands with dust and that type of magic. I'm talking about real magic that has a reality behind it, and we are living within a very magical place. And it once was common knowledge. It once was widely accepted and known it was known that we lived in a magical world and that we are beings that are full of power or magic. We are able to manipulate energy. So if you've never heard me talk about magic before, and if that word is a trigger word for you, go ahead and replace magic with the manipulation of energy, okay? With the manipulation of vibrations. So we live in a magical world. Potential becoming actual. That's what magic is. So these are in no particular order. The first one are the theories about merging dimensions. Okay, so basically the theory goes that there are alternative dimensions, that there are alternative planes of existence, parallel universes, if you will, and that they have somehow collided. That our version of reality has collided with another version of reality, and somehow they became mixed up in the process. The Mandela effect right now, over the past couple of years, seems to affect a lot of really small or contrite or seemingly insignificant things. For example, logos. All of these different logos have changed, ever so slightly, or in a big way. But if it were merging dimensions, I would fully expect it to be equal as far as the various changes that we see. Not only would it change the small things like logos or phrases from movies, but I would expect to see very large events in history having their slight changes as well. Popular people, popular events, and things of that nature. I'm not saying that that theory is wrong, I'm just saying that it doesn't resonate as strongly as what I've come up with. The other theory is time travel. A lot of people have speculated that our government has the ability or figured out how to travel back in time, and when they went back into time, that they manipulated history itself, the sequence of events, and because of those small ripples that were made in the past, that the future itself, our present, has now changed. Also, I would expect those changes to affect other things as well, not the small things that we see. And I'm not saying there are not large Mandela effects, but for the most part, a lot of them are seemingly insignificant, very small things, subtle things like colors changing, logos changing, words changing around in songs, things like that. Another popular theory is that CERN has ripped some sort of a hole into our space-time continuum. They've ripped some sort of a hole or window opening up into another dimension, and so that's having an effect on our reality. While I absolutely do not dismiss CERN as being up to some very sneaky, esoteric things, and I have my own theories about CERN and what they're up to as well, but that's for an entirely different video. I'm not so sure that I would blame the Mandela effect all on CERN or the agenda that the governments of the world have in basically trying to open up windows into alternative dimensions in order to allow otherworldly entities to enter into our world. Although I do believe that there is a lot of truth to that, I'm not sure it's entirely responsible for what has been known as the Mandela effect. And then, of course, we've got simulation theory. Simulation theory basically says that our entire reality, as we know it, is simply a simulation. That nothing is entirely real, but it's very much like you and I have been sucked into a video game, for example. I like to call it video game theory. So in the simulation theory, there are overlords, there are the beings who live and exist outside of the simulation, outside of the video game. They would be much like active participants who are also the designers, and they have the ability to manipulate the game as it is currently being played. They can jump into it and they can switch things around and they can manipulate it. I think that theory is probably a little closer to the truth than the other ones have been. Of course, some people speculated that Y2K had something to do with the advent of, the Mandela effect. I'm not a huge Y2K fan. I don't think that was really as big of a deal as people made it out to be. And then, of course, there are those that believe that the end of the world did happen in the year 2012, as was supposedly predicted by the Mayan calendar. Now, I like the Mayan calendar idea. I like where everyone went with that idea. But personally, according to my studies throughout the last few years, I have found that the calculations that were made about the end of the world or the apocalypse or revelation using the Mayan calendar was lacking a few alternative sources of information that were pertinent to coming up with the correct date. Okay, that's also an entirely different subject. Perhaps I will share my thoughts with that sometime in the future. So those are some of the more popular theories on what the Mandela effect is. So what are we dealing with? When it comes to the Mandela effect, like I said, you have an entire population of people that clearly remember that something happened this way, but whenever we go to check it out, it's not like that anymore. We are dealing with a problem of memory. That's what it is. We are remembering things differently than what we are experiencing now. It is an issue of memory. Now, this concept of memory and the problem of us being so forgetful has resurfaced time and time and time again in my personal walk, in my studies and research on the path that I'm on. I keep coming across this concept of forgetfulness, that we just tend to forget so many things. Don't you think that we would remember so much more given that we have this central processing unit called a brain and that it's constantly recording all of these things? We can't remember our early childhood for the most part. We can't remember, what we did 3.5 weeks ago, what we were doing, unless these events that happen are significant enough to have an impact Then all of a sudden they leave a little niche in our mind and we go, oh, I remember that particular event, and then I can base other events around that particular event, which is also how we keep track of time. We keep track of time according to significant spikes in history, when interesting things have happened, when things have happened that are out of the ordinary, not the mundane, but the unexpected, the awesome, and things that are vastly different from our daily lives. So, we're dealing with a problem of memory, okay? There is a psychological condition known as psychological scotoma. But in a nutshell, psychological scotoma is a mental condition. It's a condition of your brain where a person is actually blind to things that are apparent, things that are obvious, and things that are right there in front of them. We're dealing with a problem of memory and the solution of remembering, right? So if we're forgetting, then the solution is to remember, right? That's where the Mandela effect comes into play, because we are not supposed to remember the things that are different. We're not supposed to remember this, and yet some of us are. Okay, so let me move forward. So we're dealing with a problem of memory. There is the issue of psychological scotoma, where a person's brain can physically erase something from existence. The reason, I believe, is because there is this sort of magic spell. There's this psychological scotoma that's just erasing it. The moment that you talk about it, they're not hearing it. Their mind is immediately erasing it. It's being deleted from existence in that person's reality. And then they continue on, you know? So that might help to hopefully alleviate some of the frustration that you're experiencing. The effect. What is the counter to the spell? If the spell is being cast to make us forget, and many of you are already applying it, and that's why you've seen things like the Mandela effect. You can't see the Mandela effect unless you have your hand upon the counter spell. And the counter to the Mandela effect, the thing that makes us forget, is the truth. It's one of the most powerful forms of magic that there is. Magic, in the form of truth-seeking, is the counter to the spell that will make us forget. Will yourself to remember. You will start to see this world, this realm as it is now, change. And for some reason, my reality that I live in now is trying to make me forget what had happened. It's trying to make me forget who I am, where I came from. And then it allows me to bicker and argue and go to war with other people that have other ideas about it. Because the Elohim, the Elven race, they have designed it to be that way. The key component is your creativity. It is the balancing of your imagination. When we feel off, when there are things that happen like the Mandela effect or deja vu, or maybe you're just out of it, something is wrong with the world today. Not wrong, but different. Something is vastly different. Fantasy is reality. There is no separation between the two. It's all perception. It is all your perception and the world that you are creating for yourself as you choose to will a particular path before yourself. Once you grab the sword of truth, once you become a truth seeker, then all of a sudden you'll be able to see things in a whole new light. What those wizards did, those ancient wizards, the dark wizards, if you will, they decided to cast a secondary spell that would eventually contaminate our minds. What they can do is they can plant the idea. You take it into yourself and you think it's your own idea. It's called inception. They plant the idea that this concept of magic is not reliable, that it's not real. You can live in the world that doesn't have that doesn't acknowledge that says that that's a fantasy, that says that that's a story. It's not real. It's just a story. It's not real. Individuals and collectively have the power to do whatever we want to do, to be whatever we want to be, to experience so many different things. Then you can do it too. So, to wrap things up, the Mandela effect is the residual effect of those of us who are holding on to the sword of truth. Those of us who have taken that initial step into the unknown and said, I want to know more. Something's wrong with the world today. I want to figure out what it is. I'd like to know more about it. I would like the answers. I would like to set off on that journey. And so the Mandela effect manifests itself two individuals who are waking up. And you see something, but you see it for what it is currently in your physical brain. Your brain has been affected. You remember it spiritually. You remember it energetically. That's what the Mandela effect is, I believe. We are remembering, but it's not a physical remembering. It's not your brain that is remembering something. That's where it comes to spirit videos. Your soul, your spirit has its own memory that it takes with it, okay? And on occasion, you may have glimpses of that memory. You're not supposed to remember everything. That's a part of the system. That's a part of the way that we designed it, that we made it to be, okay? So your soul, your spirit carries with it memory. That's why so many of you have this sort of vague feeling about some sort of a past life or some sort of an experience that you may have had that you know you haven't had in this life. That's a part of your spirit memory. Something in you, your essence, is recognizing something is missing. Something is off. And it's not just affecting logos. It's not just affecting famous lines in movies, but it's making appearances all over the place. And I believe it's because that spell that has been cast, there was a war a long time ago amongst the gods. And the gods basically know how to perform magic. They understand magic. They are magical beings. And as a part of that magic, they used magic as a weapon against one. So all of this is basically magic. And it's the manipulation of a core energy, the subject of the magic spell. It's a manipulation of core energy, connecting energy that changes the perceived world.
This has been a Pinguinati production. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, links are in the description.